So welcome everyone. Welcome to the, what is it? Still April edition of TechKnowCon. So we're back to doing this monthly, and we're back to changing things every month and innovating. So this month we bring you new colors on the slide deck. So a slightly different design, thanks to Autonomy. So if you haven't had a chance, please introduce yourself. Just use chat and you can send it to everyone. So with that, just super quickly, TechKnowCon, for those of you who are new, and I think there's about, I want to say 10 plus people who are new to the group this time around. We actually know now. We started back in 2018, and it was an insight that learning and development at technical companies tends to be slightly different than the traditional L&D, and this was an insight that Jenny back then from Salesforce, Rajan from LinkedIn, and myself had, and a couple other folks, and we said, hey, let's get together and like create a community. So TechKnowCon was born out of that idea. 2018 we met for the first annual at LinkedIn. The following year we met at Twitter, 2019. So this is the photo back then, and then we had pandemic and moved everything online. So we now meet monthly in Roundtable edition, which is this. So super quickly, we have a couple of community guidelines. So we want, first and foremost, this to be a safe place. It's a community of peers. So we want you to be able to interact as much as possible with one another. So please be a good citizen, keep an open mind, respect privacy of other people. So if you want to get in touch with somebody, that sort of thing, we're not going to share emails. We'll talk about how you can join the community through Slack and other LinkedIn group in a bit. Please no solicitation of services. We have a governance, which is a board. I'll talk about that in a detail. And there's also a code of conduct on the website, techknowcon.io. So really quickly, behind the scenes, there's a group of people that makes this possible. So Andrew from Shopify, Chris from Microsoft, Katie previously at Twitter, now at Plume, Rajan, I mentioned, from LinkedIn, myself, and then Tomomi does a lot of heavyweight lifting and organizes everything behind the scenes. So if you have any questions during today, just feel free to ping Tomomi via chat. I mentioned the community goes beyond just the roundtables. So we have a pretty active Slack channel, Slack community. We'll share a link how to join if you're not already in there. And once you join Slack, please also introduce yourself. There's a channel for that. There's also a somewhat less active LinkedIn group, which we're trying to resurrect. And we have a Twitter account for mostly promoting articles that come out of the event, as well as the website where you can find out about events and sign up. One thing that's new this year is that we have a little bit more of a lineup of events. So if you explore techknowcon.io, you can see things that are coming up. We're a little bit more proactive about all that, which is great compared to last year. So really quickly, the agenda for today. We have one talk. It's going to be on collaborative learning, and we'll hear from Spotify on that. I'll mention that in a bit. And then after the talk, we'll have a breakout session, and the breakout session is going to be an opportunity to A, meet your peers, and B, compare the notes on what you heard in the talk. And then we'll wrap up by bringing you back together and then having just any reflections or questions or any closing thoughts as well. And then we'll also talk about the upcoming events. So during the presentation, feel free to keep your camera on. It's good to see faces. Please stay muted, mostly for the background noise issues, so that we can respect our presenters and give them the time and space. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and make them public, unless it's something that's about technical or one-off issue, in which case you can ping Tomomi. She can help you with that. Yeah, feel free to follow us on Twitter and get involved that way as well. So with that, today we have Alex and Morgan. They're both doing technical learning at Spotify. And they're going to talk about a topic that's very interesting to me. It's collaborative learning, and how they approached it, the learnings that they had at Spotify. And then we're gonna also see how collaborative learning is more than just a methodology. There's also a cultural aspect to that. There's also some tooling aspects to that, etc. So we're gonna see their experience building this collaborative learning program and the results of that. So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing and just pass on the screen to Alex and Morgan.
Great. Thank you so much, Marco. Let's see if I can get this up and running. Can you see my screen? Yes, awesome. Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Alex Krupp, and I am a senior product manager at Spotify, working on tech learning and Protean with my colleague Morgan. Hey, everyone. And today we're going to talk to you about collaborative learning as a way to speed up innovation. And both Tech Learning and Protean, the two teams that we sit on, are part of Spotify's Platform Developer Experience team, also known as PDX, which is part of our platform mission, which is the larger team that focuses on infrastructure and tooling at Spotify. So today we are going to talk about what collaborative learning is and why we're committed to it as our approach to technical learning. We'll talk you through how we create various types of collaborative learning experiences and why we think those experiences are key to unlocking innovation at Spotify. We'll tell you a bit also about the impact of these collaborative learning experiences so far and discuss what's on the docket in the future. So with that, let's talk about collaborative learning. And I like to kick this off with a quote from Daniel Ek, Spotify's CEO, on the Tim Ferriss Show podcast in December of this past year. So he said, "The world is changing just constantly, and you have to adapt to that change. If you create an environment where you can fail, that is transparent, and where you're allowed to iterate and learn on the job, you will create a learning organism that keeps getting better and better at hopefully a higher and higher pace than ever before." And really what this quote says to me is that change is the only constant. That's certainly the case for us at Spotify. And so we really have to prepare our teams to operate well in an ever-evolving environment. For us, that means creating and fostering a strong learning culture and giving folks across the R&D organization the tools that they need to upskill and reskill to meet these needs as they're changing. So change is constant, right? We can accept that as a fact. How do we keep up so that our developers can innovate faster? And our approach to that is collaborative learning. And so when we talk about collaborative learning, we mean peer-to-peer learning from others, whether it's formal classroom learning, social learning, or on-the-job learning. And collaborative is actually one of Spotify's core values, and we see it play out all across the company. It's really deeply rooted in our company culture. And there's, I think, a real desire for collective success and working together to achieve our goals, just sort of this general vibe of like, we are all in this together. And that, I think, is at the foundation of how we've been able to approach learning in general at Spotify, especially tech learning. And why collaborative learning in particular? Well, we know that a strong culture of collaborative learning creates an environment that fosters innovation. And it does this in a few ways, but we're going to focus on three of the most significant ways today. So one, it creates larger knowledge networks. And by that, we mean the ability to find, connect, and preserve institutional knowledge, which we all know is an issue at our companies. Two, it helps to reduce bottlenecks. So it helps to increase team independence and speed. And then lastly, it promotes aligned autonomy, which is a Spotify engineering principle, and is the idea that our squads, our smallest unit of team, each has a full ownership over their mission and their metrics, but they still need to remain aligned with best practices, strategy, and company priorities. And together, those three things lead to innovation. Collaborative learning also just has a long history at Spotify, and as I mentioned, like it's a core value. It's part of this culture. We've always had a strong culture of pair and mob programming as well, including like knowledge sharing and teaching each other and lunch and learns and things like that. But in 2016, there was a formal class that got created that was then called Data University, and it was a real grassroots effort by a group of engineers who recognized that there was like a pressing data engineering skill gap in particular at the company, and they were really passionate about sharing their expertise with others to kind of bridge that gap. And it was successful right away, like at this grassroots level, but we needed to figure out how to scale it. So throughout 2017, we iterated on the course, figured out how to scale it. And one of the biggest learnings from that in particular was that like it was the peer-to-peer learning that was so effective. It was based in the Spotify context. And immediately following this course, our Data University students were building pipelines, innovating, bridging that skill gap in a really real way. And in actually in a few cases, some of them were pivoting to become full-time data engineers, which was like never the intention of the course, but was a really cool outcome that I think we're still seeing today, actually. And that was really successful. We played around with this course a lot more. And in 2018, we formally launched Tech Learning, a team that builds courses created by Spotifyers for Spotifyers to increase both the breadth and the depth of our employees' technical skill sets. And so we started to rapidly grow the team and our course catalog and moved beyond just that Data University course to create the same experience, mostly initially through intro level courses like how to do backend engineering at Spotify, how to do iOS and Android development at Spotify. And it was like a really exciting time to start focusing on that peer-to-peer learning. And we know that learning happens outside of just the formal setting, though. So in 2019, alongside an incredible working group and a hack team that Morgan actually spearheaded, we started researching and building additional ways to support on-the-job and social learning opportunities. And that led to the launch of Skill Exchange in 2020, which is now a fully real product that is supported by our team Protean. And 2021, there's a lot to come. Who knows what those things will be, but I know that there's a nice runway and a strong future for this type of learning at the company. But I'm going to hand it over to Morgan now. She is going to talk about these different facets of our approach, collaborative learning across formal, social, and on-the-job learning. So Morgan, take it away.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so as Daniel mentioned in the quote that we shared, we have to create a learning environment that allows our teams to constantly grow and thrive in, as many of you know, a tech environment that's always changing. So to achieve this, we want to do as much as we can to create collaborative learning experiences in as many ways as we can, to ultimately create the learning environment that leverages collaboration and enables us to be the ones directing the speed of change through our innovation. So over the next few slides, we'll talk about how we've applied this belief in practice through the three main areas of learning that Alex mentioned: formal learning, on-the-job learning, and social learning. All right, so formal technical learning courses at Spotify are created by Spotifyers for Spotifyers. They are supported by the tech learning team, and they teach participants how to do things in the Spotify context. Our data scientists and engineers write and teach the course content with the primary goal to provide actionable takeaways participants can apply immediately within our tech environment. Ideally, you can take a course and implement what you learn the very next day. Primarily, formal learning at Spotify happens in a classroom, or in recent months, the virtual classroom. And like more traditional classroom training, instructors teach concepts and facilitate learning through application, hands-on technical exercises, and collaborative group work. In this model, what's really neat is that learning happens in two ways. Course participants learn application of a particular topic, and our instructors have the opportunity to present and share their knowledge and experiences as engineers and data scientists themselves. So one way we've integrated this into our learning environment is through Tech University. And Tech University is what we call our catalog of courses that are organized in various topic areas. We call the different topic areas schools, and they can vary from more introductory level knowledge, or what we call breadth courses, to more advanced topics, which we call depth courses. We also have courses that span across domains such as code quality and accessibility. The impact of these courses vary from helping to evangelize best practices, provide supported migrations, to helping Spotifyers learn how to approach specific tasks. But overall, they focus on how we do things at Spotify. And these courses also bring together different people from different squads across the organization who are working on similar challenges. A second way we've integrated formal learning is with the Tech Learning Toolkit. So while the TechU course catalog has expanded quickly in the last couple of years, it's important to be able to scale collaborative learning opportunities even faster. And since Tech Learning strategizes on this larger research and development level, our focus is typically on priorities identified from our key stakeholders and leadership. However, we want to empower teams who have unique learning needs for their internal stakeholders, and we want to help them scale their formal learning ideas. So this toolkit provides a framework for Spotifyers to build their own training and includes many of our best practices for course development. So our second type of learning experience is on-the-job learning. On-the-job learning is happening all the time, and it has to with the speed of change. And while it's happening every day, one practice that has supported this type of learning in a more formal way is embeds. Spotify has a long tradition of on-the-job learning through something called embeds. And embeds are intentional short-term opportunities to work on another squad. So these internal exchanges allow us to learn about new tech stacks, help solve problems together, allow our internal experts to share their knowledge, and ultimately take learning experiences back to home squad. So it's a bit of like a cross-pollination effect. And squads who host embeds also benefit by bringing diverse perspectives and ways of thinking into their work by collaborating with Spotifyers from different squads and technical environments. And until recently, embeds were arranged informally through personal networks, word of mouth, and they really lacked visibility on an organizational level. So one of the ways that we've increased the visibility of collaborative on-the-job learning opportunities and continue to reinforce these practices is through a tool we built called the Skill Exchange. And on the Skill Exchange, managers can advertise embed opportunities on their teams and include details about the work that will take place during the embed, in addition to any preferred expertise. So Spotifyers can also sort the available embeds and find opportunities that best match their development experience or learning goals. And we also encourage embeds as a way to continue learning from tech learning courses. So it's this really nice way of connecting formal learning to on-the-job learning. The third type of learning experience is social learning. And as Alex mentioned, collaboration is built into our culture, and often it's the informal and organic interactions between Spotifyers like pairing and hacking that can be most impactful for learning. And these more casual interactions have previously been dependent on conversations in Slack channels or in the office. And so to provide more visibility and intention around these social learning opportunities, especially in our virtual environment now, we've developed ways to connect individuals through common interests and help needed, with some less formal features on the Skill Exchange. One of those features is one-on-ones. So Spotifyers can create a request to pair, shadow, or receive mentorship about a particular subject and be as detailed or broad as needed. And for those looking to share their expertise, they can also offer pairing or mentorship to others. Another aspect of the Skill Exchange is skill profiles, and skill profiles is recently a newly added feature. Profiles serve as an opportunity for Spotify to share the unique knowledge and skills that they can offer to collaborate with others or the areas they're learning. So this helps invite more opportunities to identify how we can support one another. It also allows us to get unblocked quickly by finding someone who can answer a question. And finally, we have the hacks feature in the skill exchange, which allows Spotifyers to share ideas for collaboration, whether for Global Hack Week, Team Hack Days, or individual side projects. Individuals can express interest in existing teams or adopt an idea suggested by someone else. So all three of these features, embeds, profiles, and hacks, allow Spotifyers to connect to each other faster and have more visibility to the variety of learning opportunities available at Spotify. It also allows us to be more detailed in Spotify's searches for opportunities that best meet their needs, learning-wise or interests, which ultimately will make collaboration matches more successful and create pathways for innovation. So now that we've covered the ways that we're fostering collaboration learning experiences and making it easier than ever for Spotifyers to learn from each other, I'm going to walk through 3 example learning journeys. So we have Linnea, Raul, and Cameron. Our first journey is with Linnea, who recently completed a Tech University course. Her goal is to apply some of the concepts she learned prior to beginning work on a new squad feature. There are a couple different ways she can find the collaboration she needs. The first option is she could create a one-on-one in the skill exchange seeking a mentor. However, if she doesn't have a lot of time for someone to respond to her request, she could be proactive and actively search skills that she's interested in. So in this case, in the screenshot, you can see she's searching for Mobius, which is a Spotify framework that she learned in the course. And she can even narrow the search results to people in her same time zone and mission. Our second journey is with Raul, who hasn't used some of his backend skills recently since he finished a large project on his squad. He's interested in the backend tooling in another area of the company. There are a few different ways that Raul can practice and share his backend skills. So he can seek out an embed opportunity posted by another squad. His second option is he can search for hacks that need backend skills. Or his final option, he could offer a one-on-one to mentor or pair with others. And then our final journey is with Cameron. Cameron is an engineering manager, and he's looking to support the squad in strengthening their data engineering skills for upcoming planned work in the quarter. As you can see, there are, again, multiple ways that Cameron can support his squad to develop their skills. He can support them in taking a Tech University course. He can encourage them to seek out mentorship or other types of one-on-ones. And he can also post an embed opportunity for another Spotifyer to help the team cross-skill in data engineering. So here's a recap of the journeys we've covered for Linnea, Raul, and Cameron. The biggest or major takeaway here is that there are multiple ways to find the support to learn, give support to help others, and ultimately make collaboration easier and faster, whether it's an immediate need or one that can be planned for. And now Alex is going to talk more about the impact of these collaborative learning experiences.
Cool, thanks, Morgan. So you've now heard about our collaborative learning approach and the different journeys that our learners can take through our products. And now I just want to tell you about the impact that this approach has had. And to do that, I want to first just invoke the framework that I talked about in the beginning, the ways in which collaborative learning really translates to innovation. So 1, through larger knowledge networks, 2, helping to reduce bottlenecks, and 3, by promoting aligned autonomy. And so the first one that we'll talk through is larger knowledge networks. And this image here is like incredibly busy and horrifying. It's like an internal org chart that we have that is very hard to navigate. It's the potential knowledge network. But collaborative learning experiences really help you cut through that. It helps you democratize knowledge and opportunities for people across the company. And these experiences connect Spotifyers with other Spotifyers globally who can answer questions, review code, teach the Spotify way, pass on historical knowledge, mentor, support on all kinds of projects. All of these things really drive us forward. And moreover, we're connecting with more diverse groups, bringing in more varied perspectives, creating more space for innovation. And I think overall, creating larger knowledge networks gives people the opportunity to access knowledge and expertise across the company for the sake of the greater good and for like our collective success, instead of having it just pop up and live in these sort of random invisible pockets. And here's a fun anecdote that I like to tell to illustrate this. Historically, hacking during our Global Hack Week, which just happened about a month ago, has been typically very location-based. So like people who work in the New York office hack with people in New York, people in Stockholm hack with people in Stockholm, et cetera. But this year in our hack portal, we allowed folks involved in Global Hack Week to indicate the time zone that they would be hacking in. And one of the time zones that you could choose was anywhere. So meaning you're open to people across the spectrum of locations. And over 300 hacks later, nearly everyone chose the anywhere time zone, like almost 100%, indicating, I think, really how we're widening our reach of who we interact and work with, and really making that knowledge network bigger and stronger than ever. Another big impact of collaborative learning is reducing bottlenecks. So collaborative learning, whether it's formal, social, or on the job, helps people go from stuck to unstuck quickly and take on projects that they couldn't have taken on before, whether it's a hack or a ticket related to an OKR. So these are just a few like fast facts. And actually these numbers are a bit out of date, like maybe 6 weeks out of date. Apologies for that. But we can just say at least 150 embeds have been created, and more than 30 teams have gotten unstuck via an embed, which like sometimes that number feels small, like 30 out of 150 asks, but that's 30 teams that could do something that they couldn't do before. So that's quite impactful. We are also bringing new skills to your team by taking on, letting people take on a course or pairing with someone on a project. And you can really get from this data a better idea about what will help unblock people. So you can see in the red section, the top skills and domains that are requested across embeds, hacks, and mentorships. And this information helps us develop additional courses in the tech learning space. We know now what's blocking people and can find additional ways to address it outside of the skill exchange. It also is information that we can pass along to leadership to help with workforce planning, both in the short and the long term. And then lastly, we know that collaborative learning leads to aligned autonomy, which is one of Spotify's engineering beliefs, and is the idea that our squads have full ownership over their mission and metrics, but still need to remain aligned with the best practices, strategy, and company priorities that we have. And formal learning is really one of the best ways to make sure that people know and adhere to best practices. Our courses and boot camps help evangelize best practices, keep R&D aligned on tooling, speed up migrations, and like all these things that lead to innovation. Our courses are developed and taught by Spotifyers, as we mentioned. And this past year in 2020, we had 227 contributors who were involved, 131 of whom for the first time, from all across the company, really ensuring alignment across business units as they reached over 1,800 learners globally in more than 7 domain areas, I believe. And depending on the course, we track some very specific quantitative metrics and application of knowledge, as well as qualitative metrics like increased confidence in application. And one, I can't share them all now, but one example that I can provide that's tangible is we had 213 supported tech migrations in tech learning courses in 2020 alone. So that felt like a big accomplishment. And in on-the-job and social learning experiences, there's both, as Morgan mentioned, this natural cross-pollination and exchange that occurs, as well as the ability to intentionally seek out people with a specific knowledge set. And this leads to alignment while encouraging engagement among diverse perspectives. So collaborative learning on all parts of the spectrum, formal, on the job, and social, is deeply rooted in Spotify's culture. When Spotify was small, though, we didn't have to be quite as intentional about fostering a particular engineering and learning culture. But as we've scaled to have thousands of people in R&D, it's been really important for us to think about the things that support innovation, things like larger knowledge networks, reducing bottlenecks, and aligned autonomy, and really embed those things deep into the company. And we've been intentional about how we approach collaborative learning, both through formal tech learning courses and through the skill exchange platform. And these are elements of both a strong learning culture, we think, and an innovative culture. And by creating these collaborative learning experiences, we really see ourselves as creating that environment that Daniel spoke about on the Tim Ferriss Show podcast, one that is responsive to our ever-changing world, that allows us to keep getting better and better at a higher pace than ever before. So what is next? There's still a lot of work to do. We need to nurture this culture, right? Like as we get bigger and bigger, we have to keep reinforcing the collaborative learning culture and supporting the mechanisms to make it happen. So for example, engineering manager support, making sure that they're aligned with these types of activities. There are obvious places that we can highlight for product adoption, like development talks, like how are engineering managers talking about these opportunities with their direct reports. One that our team is particularly passionate about is supporting diversity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives and elevating underrepresented voices through this work. I think especially, when we think about women and people of color who can be more likely to underrate themselves and say that I am, maybe afraid to raise their hand as being the expert who can teach something. We really want to cut through that and empower people to share their knowledge with the rest of the company. I think we're also going to have to constantly change to meet new demands, right? Like the target's always moving, as we all know in this work, and we have to be really nimble to keep up. And then lastly, we are considering sort of externalizing skill exchange as a product and inspiring other companies to focus on collaborative learning as well. So exporting that bit of the Spotify culture is something that we're excited about. So that is it from us. Thank you so much for having us. And please feel free, obviously we'll talk in these breakout sessions, and feel free to ask any questions that you have here. But if you want to reach out to us afterwards, here are our email addresses. We would love to field questions, and we're both in the Slack TechKnowCon workspace. So would love to connect with you there as well. But thank you so much for having us.
This is so awesome. Thank you for sharing all this. It reminds me a lot about the work I did at Twitter University back in the day. But I love how you put it in the context of innovation. So it's really about being intentional about creating a culture of learning so that innovation doesn't just happen on its own. It's actually the right seeds and the right culture in place to foster it. Super awesome. Thank you. I just love it. So many nuggets in there. So cool. Great to see everyone. Awesome. So I'm super curious what came up, what kind of questions you all folks had. And I'll maybe, and so we can ask this for Alex and Morgan. And so one question that, for example, came up in our room was about culture and like how that provides either for the guardrails or either supports or deters implementing collaborative learning. So that's one thing that came up. And the other thing that came up was if somebody was gonna roll this, if this is the gold standard, what Spotify has, like what are the baby steps? Like how do you get toward that path, right? So think about your questions. Please, you can put them in the chat, or if you want to speak up, just raise your hand. Either works. So we have a little bit of informal time to learn more from Spotify. So Alex, Morgan, any thoughts on that? Culture and baby steps.
We talked a little bit about this in our breakout session as well. I think, one thing to note was like, we didn't just you saw the timeline, like this didn't just happen overnight. Like it's been really the last 5 years that this stuff has slowly progressed from like one course that tried to do this through like building up the course catalog over time, like proving the value of that, sort of integrating ourselves into the culture of like, both contributing to tech learning courses as a subject matter expert and attending tech learning courses as a participant is like something that we do here, and that is like integrated now into like OKRs from teams across the company, where they now write tech learning into their OKRs in some respects, whether it's creating a course, committing to create a course in a certain quarter, or sending a certain number of people to gain basic skills in one area. So it's kind of evolved to that, to then Morgan, who sort of flagged for us. I was saying in our group, like we were running around trying to make matches between people who were attending tech learning courses and needed to practice their skill set after the course with teams that needed people with that skill set. So like Morgan runs our mobile programs, and like iOS and Android were Intro to iOS and Intro to Android were two of her first courses. And it was like we were running around trying to match people ourselves who attended that course with projects that they could work on in the iOS and Android space outside of their team. So it was like us doing all of this stuff, running around like, you know, with our like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to make these matches, to like, we should do research into this. We should figure out how to make this a sustainable thing, and like some kind of Craigslist exchange. And so, you know, it's been a 5-year process. We hope that by open sourcing at least the skill exchange, that we can kind of at least give you the engineering part of that quickly, and the actual product part. That's the idea.
Got it. So it doesn't happen overnight. You need to fund it, right? Have somebody that's actually doing the heavyweight lifting, and then you also need a roadmap, sort of like here's how we're gonna iterate through this and make it happen over time. So
absolutely.
Totally makes sense. Jasmine had a great question, which is about embeds, and how do you make sure that they work out, and like, is there such a thing as like the bad fit, and how do you work around that, or how do you ensure that the fit is the right fit and so forth? Anything on that topic?
Morgan, you want to touch on that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great question. I think, again, the culture around embeds has probably shaped a lot of how this process works. Before, it was really not clear how embeds happened. It was sort of very informal, you know, engineering managers would talk to each other, and then it got really complicated if the embed was in a different location and figuring out the logistics of that. I think what we try to do with the skill exchange is provide a space for people who are looking for embeds to be as clear as possible on the skill sets they need. So like, we have a need for this skill, and potentially we need these other skills as well. So it's this ability to be more detailed, and just like when you are looking for a candidate, be more explicit on like what would be the right fit. And so I think we have reduced potential bad fits through the skill exchange. But again, this is also, I think, one thing we talked about in the very beginning when we released skill exchange. Like, we were very nervous about like, you know, what if people are embedding to change different teams, and how are engineering managers going to feel about this? And I think we sort of we just built the tool, and we figured any of the conversation and the communications should happen between the people who are involved, and we're not really going to build that into the tool. We're just going to make the connection and provide people the ability to be as explicit as possible, both in their searching and in their advertising of the help that they need. So that's sort of how we've approached it. And at least anecdotally, I haven't heard of very many bad fits.
No, me neither. And one thing I would just add to that is in the level of in the way that you can be explicit, you can say like, we're looking for an expert, or we're open to beginners, or like any range. So at least from a skill perspective, you can welcome people from whatever skill range you're willing to work with in that area. And then we also give people templates of like work agreements, like embed agreements that have worked before for people, for managers to fill out with the person who's embedding and the manager of the home squad. So like, or sorry, of the embed squad. So they can at least align on expectations going into it. And I think that's a good place where where maybe you would find the bad fit before it happened, in setting those expectations.
Got it. Yeah, and so you touched on something, Alex, which is not just the skill exchange, but the skill leveling, right? And Raymond had this question of how do you manage that? What if it's you know, you have disproportionately too many junior people that you wanted to up level on a given skill? How do you manage that sort of ratio of juniors to seniors or whatever levels you use internally?
I think that's one of the hardest things that we do. And there's not a clear answer for that. I think it speaks to, like, it's a kind of data when an embed doesn't get filled because it's like, you know, too senior and we don't have as senior of a workforce in that area. Like, that's the kind of data that we can pass along to leadership and be like, hey, like, this is maybe a workforce planning issue. So that's something that we think about. The other thing that I would say is, sometimes I think people think they're more junior than they are. Like, their title, like, obviously there's title, but there's also that imposter syndrome thing that I was talking about, where, like, even I was just talking to a director of product not long ago who was putting herself up for mentorship to be a mentor. And she was like, I can't put expert. I'm not an expert product manager or product director. And I was like, you're a director. Like, you can call yourself an expert, you know? So a lot of it is like, how do you get people to feel confident enough to either post that they're an expert or to respond to ads where it's like advanced or expert, when they're like afraid to think of themselves that way. And so I think there's both the imposter syndrome part of it and the literal, like, we don't have the skills part of it. And it's definitely been one of the more like uphill battles part of this work.
So empowering,
the other thing,
encouraging. Yeah, sorry.
The other thing I would say too, is like, I think what's also been challenging is, you know, initially this started out as like, how can we find opportunities for beginners to continue practicing? And I think we also don't see very many embeds posted for beginners. And I think that has a lot to do with sort of us trying to change the culture a little bit. Even this embed culture already existed, but before it was like, I have this specific skill and I need an intermediate or expert type person to help me do this. I think what we also have identified that we need to work on, like the folks who are managing the skill exchange, is also educating people on how you can use the skill exchange, because, you know, all these teams have backlogs of very basic tasks that they could potentially put on as an embed and say like, hey, we need some very basic help on iOS. So someone who has gone through this Intro to iOS course can come and do that work. But they haven't necessarily made that connection that this is a tool that's available for you to promote these more beginner style tasks for people who are learning those things. So that's another thing that we also need to like figure out and continue to nurture and like educate people like, hey, you can use this tool in a number of different ways.
Got it. Thank you. And then, and so Christian had a question about the time of an embed and how that works. And I think you mentioned sort of having this templated sort of agreement that is just a starting point for managers to kind of then mold it and make it work for them. How does that work? I assume that also talks about the time of the embed and how the length, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. To answer the question about time, it really does vary. And I think it varies by need. I've seen embeds for as long as 6 months and as short as 2 weeks, sometimes less than that. It really varies across the need. But it's an embed is always meant to be temporary. Like, one thing that we've tried to make very clear is like, we have, you know, if there's internal opportunities in Spotify, those live somewhere else. And embeds are really about short-term opportunities where you plan to go back to your home squad.
Yep. Cool. Thank you for shedding more light on the nitty-gritty details of that. And Ron just got a question. If one were a beginner embed, does that person have support with the skills to the mentoring or something? So in other words, how much of the support guardrails are there for somebody who is being embedded into a team?
Yeah. Go for it. I was going to say, this I think will vary squad to squad, but a lot of squads actually have like a full onboard, like they onboard their embed, they spend time walking them through the tech stack. And I think in this case, a beginner embed would certainly be paired with someone who would walk them through the work that would need to get done and like what their because that embed squad is receiving work from that person. So there's a benefit both ways, right? Like they're getting worked on, and this beginner gets to practice their skills. So I think it serves them a lot to help and mentor that person and make sure they feel comfortable doing that.
Cool. So let me, cool. Well, unless there are any other burning questions, I want to sort of close this out as well. And thank you so much, Alex and Morgan. This was a super cool and very near and dear to my heart with respect to peer learning and everything else that we've done. So super informative. Thank you. As a reminder, TechKnowCon is by us, for us community. So as such, we always look for speakers, topics, just celebrating people doing cool stuff out there, right? That can serve as an inspiration, like Morgan and Alex just shared with their work at Spotify that lasted over 5 years and keeps going. So we're always looking for things like that. So people like that, please send any possible speakers to Momi or me or anyone else on the board, so that we can bring that up. As such, just keep it heads up that we're going to have an event on May 19th. It's not exactly 100% dialed in what it's going to be. We're thinking of trying a new format that's going to be more informal and more of a sort of networking, getting to know each other, meeting, greeting. So less of a lean back speaker experience and more of a that of meeting your peers and getting to just kind of get to know one another. So keep May 19th, same time, 11 o'clock Pacific on your calendar. So put a hold on that. We also do have a number of events coming up. So in June, we have our own Rajan speaking on agile instructional design. And then in July, we're going to hear from Autodesk from Christian and Danny on their hybrid manager development program. So yeah, so that's coming up next couple of months. So with that, thank you for joining us. And if you're not a part of a Slack channel, please join Slack as well. So super excited to see everyone, and I hope we're going to see you again soon. So there's a Slack channel link if you're not a part of that.
Thanks so much, everybody.